There's something different about people who grew up in the 1970s, because this decade didn't just shape a generation, it formed a specific kind of psychological resilience that experts are only now beginning to understand. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong. When we think about childhood development, we assume more supervision leads to better results, more structure, more guidance, more protection. But kids from the 1970s, they prove that idea completely wrong. Think about it. You're 7 years old, and your mom sends you outside after breakfast with one simple rule: be home before dark. No GPS tracking, no hourly check-ins, no adult planned activities, just you, your neighborhood friends, and the freedom to make your own decisions. You'd spend entire afternoons building forts in the woods, creating detailed games with nothing but sticks and imagination, handling disagreements with friends without a single adult stepping in. When someone got hurt, you figured out how to deal with it. When you got bored with one game, you came up with another. When conflicts started, you solved them yourselves because there was no one else to do it for you. This hands-off approach wasn't neglect, it was trust. And neuroscientists have uncovered something unusual. This kind of unstructured play actually reshapes the brain for creativity and problem solving. It builds what's known as executive function, the ability to plan, adjust, and think clearly without outside direction. Now imagine you're riding your bike through the neighborhood and you notice the Johnson's car is in the driveway at a strange time. You learn to read a situation quickly. You knew which neighbor's yard you could cut through and which one would yell. You could tell when the older kids were in a mood to let you join versus when you should stay away. This wasn't paranoia. This was survival awareness. When you're moving through the world without constant adult supervision, you develop an extra sense for situations. You learn to judge risks on your own, make quick decisions about safety, and read people's intentions from body language and tone. What researchers call hypervigilant social awareness sounds technical, but you were simply paying attention, and it made you sharp in ways modern kids whose parents explain every social moment simply aren't. Fast forward to 3:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. The school bus drops you off and you walk up to your house, pulling the key from under the flower pot. You unlock the door and step inside. No panic, no fear, just the quiet sound of your footsteps and the hum of the refrigerator. You drop your backpack and make yourself food. You turn on the TV, start your homework, maybe call a friend on the landline. This daily routine wasn't isolation, it was competence. Every afternoon you showed yourself that you could handle the next few hours alone, that you were capable, that you didn't need someone hovering over you to get by. Something became wired into these kids during those quiet afternoons. When things went wrong, they didn't look around for someone else to blame or fix it. They asked themselves what they could do differently. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control, the idea that your actions directly shape your outcomes. But for kids in the 1970s, it wasn't a theory, it was just how things worked. You fell, you got up, you broke something, you figured out how to fix it or explain it. This kind of self-reliance runs deep. But let's talk about those moments when you'd finished your homework, watched your assigned hour of TV, and still had 3 hours before dinner. You'd wander into the living room where your mom was folding laundry and say those two words, "I'm bored." You know what she'd say back? "Go find something to do." That was it. No phone, no tablet, no instant solution. Just you and that restless, uncomfortable feeling of having nothing to do. So you'd wander outside and watch clouds. You'd reorganize your card collection for the third time. You'd call your friend and they'd be bored too. So you'd be bored together until one of you thought of something. You learned that boredom wasn't an emergency. It was just a signal, a small nudge from your brain saying it was ready to create something new. Modern parents treat boredom like a problem that needs immediate fixing, but you sat with it. You let it sit, and eventually something always came out of it. This tolerance for discomfort goes far beyond childhood boredom. These are people who can sit in silence without reaching for their phones, who can wait in long lines without losing control, who can deal with uncertainty because they learned early that not every moment needs to be filled with stimulation or answers. Here's what's interesting. Studies show that people who experience regular periods of low stimulation as children have more active brains for creativity, self-reflection, and original thinking. Basically, boredom taught your brain how to create ideas from nothing. Which brings us to the big oak tree at the end of the street. You know the one, branches thick enough to climb, high enough that the ground looks small from the top. You climb trees, tall ones. Trees where if you fell, you weren't getting back up smiling. You rode your bike without a helmet, feeling the wind rush through your hair as you sped down hills, hands off the handlebars because that was how you looked cool. You jumped off bridges into questionable water and built ramps for your skateboard or anything you could find that were clearly not stable. And yes, sometimes you got hurt. You scraped your knees, twisted your ankles, maybe broke a bone. But here's what happened. You learned through direct experience what was truly dangerous versus what just looked scary. You developed an internal system for judging risk. That tall tree, you learned exactly how high you could climb before the branches became too thin. That bike jump. You knew the difference between an exciting landing and a trip to the emergency room. This wasn't carelessness, it was understanding earned through experience. While other generations might freeze when facing uncertain situations, kids from the 1970s learned to evaluate and adjust. They understood that some risks were worth taking because they lived through the outcomes of both caution and boldness. This created what psychologists call a calibrated sense of risk. But for you, it was simply knowing your limits because you'd already tested them. Then came those weekends when all your friends were busy. Saturday morning, no plans, no friends available, just you and the whole weekend stretched ahead. And you know what? That was fine. You could spend hours in your room with comic books, building detailed scenarios with your toy figures, drawing, reading the same book for the third time. You'd take bike rides alone, explore the neighborhood solo, spend an entire afternoon just thinking. This wasn't isolation. This was being comfortable with your own company. You learned early that you didn't need constant outside validation to feel secure in who you were. That being alone and being lonely were two very different things. The independence placed on this generation created something unexpected, a deep ability for solitude that almost feels unusual. These are people who can spend entire weekends alone and come out refreshed instead of drained, who don't need to fill every moment with social interaction or digital connection. What researchers now recognize as essential for mental health, the ability to self-soothe, to be comfortable in your own thoughts, was simply your way of entertaining yourself, and it created adults who handle problems differently, manage stress in their own way, and move through relationships with a particular kind of emotional awareness that's becoming harder to find. But that emotional awareness was built in moments you might not expect. Something happened at school, maybe someone said something unkind, maybe you failed a test. Maybe you argued with your best friend. You're lying on your bed staring at the ceiling and you feel that warm, tight feeling in your chest. Anger, embarrassment, disappointment. But here's the thing, you couldn't immediately text someone about it, couldn't scroll through social media for validation, couldn't even call anyone because your mom was on the landline and mobile phones didn't exist. So you just sat with it. You went to your room, stared at the ceiling, maybe hit your pillow a few times. You felt the feeling until it passed. This wasn't emotional suppression, this was something different. You learned that emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent states, that you could feel disappointed without turning it into a disaster, that you could experience conflict without immediately needing to resolve it or get reassurance from someone else. What psychologists call emotional self-regulation, one of the strongest predictors of success in both personal and professional relationships, was simply you sitting with your emotions. Those who grew up in the 1970s don't need constant reassurance because they developed internal systems for managing their emotional states. They learned that feelings pass, that discomfort is survivable, that not every emotion requires immediate action or outside involvement. Now let's think about how long you'd wait to watch your favorite show. Really what it felt like to wait, like truly wait. All week long you'd think about it. You'd plan your life around making sure you were in front of a TV, whether at home or at a friend's place, to watch your favorite show. And when that show ended on a cliffhanger, you'd wait 7 days to find out what happened next. This rhythm of anticipation and reward wasn't a lesson your parents taught, it was just how life worked. And it created something powerful, the ability to wait for good things, to understand deep down that anticipation makes the reward better, that some things are worth waiting for. Modern brains are wired for instant satisfaction. immediate answers, instant streaming, next day delivery, but your brain learned a different pattern. Christmas morning felt special specifically because you waited 365 days for it. The first day of summer vacation felt amazing because you earned it through 9 months of school. That new toy meant something because you saved for it. And here's what researchers have found. People who can delay immediate pleasure for future rewards have lower rates of addiction, higher academic achievement, and more stable relationships. The 1970s generation had this training built into daily life without realizing it. You weren't learning delayed gratification. You were simply living in a slower world, and it shaped your brain for patience. But not everything was easy, even with patience. Remember the day you fell off your bike? Knees bleeding, hands scraped. Your parents looked and said, "You're fine, get back on." So you did. You lost the neighborhood baseball game, struck out with the bases loaded, felt that heavy disappointment, and the next day you played again. Your science fair volcano didn't erupt. Your book report earned a C. You didn't make the team. You forgot your lines in the school play, and each time you felt that sting of failure. But here's what didn't happen. There was no group of adults rushing in to make sure your feelings weren't hurt. No participation trophy to soften the moment, no adjusted grades to protect your self-esteem. You failed, felt bad, and then figured out what to do differently next time. This wasn't harshness, it was your brain developing resilience. While other generations might spiral into self-doubt after work rejection or relationship problems, kids from the 1970s carry an inner voice that says, "All right, what did I learn from this?" They treat failure as information rather than identity, because they learned early that falling down doesn't define you. Standing back up does, and you needed that resilience when dealing with the complex social world of childhood friendships. Picture the park on a summer afternoon. No adult was managing your friendships. When someone said they'd meet you at the park and didn't show up, you had to figure out whether they forgot, whether they were upset with you, or whether something came up. When two friends were arguing and you were stuck in the middle, you had to move through that situation on your own. When someone's feelings got hurt during a game, you had to work out how to fix it without a teacher stepping in to step between you. This pushed you to become a student of human behavior. You learned to read small expressions, that slight tightening around someone's eyes that meant they were upset even if they said they were fine. You could sense tension in a space before others noticed anything was off. You understood that what people said and what they meant were not always the same. You knew which friend you could joke with and which one took things personally. You understood group dynamics, who led, who kept the peace, who followed along. You learned when to push back and when to let things slide, when to apologize, and when to stand firm. People assume that less supervised childhoods produced antisocial or emotionally distant adults. The reality is the opposite. These kids had to develop highly advanced social skills because they were handling complex peer relationships without adult referees. They learned to read tone, pick up on subtext, and recognize that most communication happens beneath the surface of spoken words. And now, decades later, many of those 1970s kids are standing in their own kitchens, watching their own children struggle with something. Maybe it's a homework problem, maybe it's a friendship issue, and they feel that urge to step in, to fix it, to smooth it out. But they don't. They give their children room to make mistakes, not because they don't care, but because they understand that too much protection creates anxiety instead of safety. They know that children need to face manageable risks to develop real confidence. They can watch their kids struggle with something and hold back the instinct to immediately step in and fix it. When their child fails, they ask, "What do you think you could do differently next time?" Because that's the question they learn to ask themselves. They value competence over comfort. They understand that short-term discomfort leads to long-term strength, that struggle builds character, that independence creates security. These aren't just abstract ideas they picked up from a parenting book. Their neural pathways were shaped deeply through direct experience. These individuals carry something within them that is becoming increasingly rare in our hyperconnected, overstimulated world. A quiet confidence that comes from knowing they can handle whatever life throws at them. Their brains were literally reshaped by freedom, reinforced by boredom, and calibrated by risk. They are living evidence that maybe, just maybe, we've made the process of raising resilient human beings more complicated than it needs to be. That sometimes the most effective thing you can give someone isn't protection from difficulty, but the ability to handle it on their own.